Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. This morning, Russian troops launched a missile attack on the Kharkiv region in the northeast of Ukraine. More than 5 missiles were fired from Belgorod, Russia. Elsewhere, at least 3 people were injured after a Russian missile attack on the Odessa Oblast in southern Ukraine. This morning, the fires were extinguished and the detonation of ammunition stored at the military base near Yankoy in the Russian-occupied Crimea ceased. Huge queues of cars with fleeing Russian tourists have formed on the bridge from the Crimean Peninsula towards the Russian Federation. Now, I am asking all our people in Crimea, in the occupied territories of Donbass and in the Kharkiv region to be careful. Please stay away from Russian military facilities and all those places where military ammunition and equipment are stored. The fewer opportunities the occupier have to do evil and kill Ukrainians, the sooner we will be able to end this war and liberate our country. The increased traffic on the bridge leading from Crimea to Russia proves that the absolute majority of the citizens of the terrorist state already understand, or at least feel, that Crimea is not a place for them. Yesterday, the Russians launched a missile attack on the territory. So I'll do that again. Yesterday, the Russians launched a missile attack from the territory of Belarus, as a result of which they damaged the runway of the airport near Zhytomyr and several cars. There was no loss of life. At night and in the morning, the Russian occupiers again fired on Mykolaiv. Port infrastructure and civilian facilities, including the university and a production plant, were destroyed. Private houses were also damaged. Missiles launched from the S-300 system were initially designed as surface-to-air weapons. The Russians now aim them at ground targets. We know that their accuracy is over 120 meters, so they fire 2 to 5 missiles simultaneously at one target. It is not a precision weapon, and the Russians know that by targeting a selected object, they also destroy the surrounding buildings. But it doesn't mean anything to them. They do it to intimidate people. Coastal holiday resorts near Odessa have been fired on. 2 holiday resorts and several private houses were destroyed. 4 people were injured. A difficult but Ukrainian-controlled situation persists in the south. There has been a storm in the Black Sea for several days. The enemy ships continue to take refuge behind the Tarkuk Peninsula and further towards Novorossiysk along the Crimean coast. But there are 2 ships ready for action carrying 16 missiles of the caliber type, so the threat of missile attacks remains. In the occupied territories, the Russians continue to kidnap Ukrainian local government officials who do not want to cooperate with the occupation authorities. In recent days, the chairwoman of Verkhnai Rohachik municipality, Svetlana Korotun, has been abducted. The fate of the 5 people who were previously kidnapped remains unknown. The occupiers want to create a collaborative governance in all local governments. Therefore, they remove those who do not want to cooperate. The kidnapping of the chairman of the municipalities continues. Russians are trying to replace them with other people, but there are fewer and fewer people willing to cooperate. Evacuation from the villages closest to the front line is underway in the Donetsk region. More than 6,000 people, including over 1,000 children, were evacuated from the frontier zone in the Donetsk region. In the territories regained in the districts of Zhytomyr, Sumy, Kharkiv and Chernihiv, the infrastructure is being rebuilt. The Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine extended martial law throughout the country for another 90 days. That is, until November the 21st. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs wants to create a coalition of countries that limit the number of visas issued to Russian citizens, Deputy Minister Marcin Przydacz has announced. In turn, Finland has already limited the number of visas available to Russians to 500 a day. Yesterday, Estonia announced the end of issuing tourist visas to Russians. The President of Ukraine called for the suspension of the issuing of visas to Russian citizens by EU countries, because through their passivity they bear moral responsibility for the war. According to Zelensky, the Union should not be a luxury store for Russians to go shopping, avoiding sanctions. First, there must be a guarantee that Russian murderers and state terror brokers will not use Schengen visas. Second, Europe cannot be turned into a supermarket that anyone with money can enter. Such community sanctions, that is, agreed upon by all the 27 member countries, would be useful. We do it on our own. By the way, the Baltic countries have also been doing it for a few months, in fact, since the outbreak of the war. By the decision of the authorities in Tallinn, citizens of the Russian Federation will not be allowed to enter Estonia. However, the ban will not apply to people residing permanently in Estonia, Russian embassy employees, transport workers, and people with families in Estonia.
There is a war going on. There is a genocide war going on. And of course, the one element, as I said, is a moral perspective of letting people as a normality to go to see Louvre or Brandenburg Gates when by their tax money is financed aggression war.
The authorities in Helsinki have also taken restrictions on granting visas to Russians. The Finnish Ministry of Foreign Affairs announced yesterday that the number of applications processed daily will drop to 500.
People have had very strong moral reactions to increased tourism in these circumstances when Finland at the same time is receiving a lot of Ukrainian refugees and so forth. So this is our reaction to that situation.
German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has expressed skepticism about a potential general entry ban for all Russian citizens. We have adopted very far-reaching sanctions that affect many specific people associated with the Russian government and the oligarchs, and we will definitely continue it. But if these measures were directed against everyone, it would weaken their effectiveness, and besides, it would hit completely innocent people. According to experts, the sanctions that affect other areas of public life are to make Russians think about the brutal war waged by the Kremlin. The Russians, however, are strongly influenced by the propaganda flowing from Putin's media. In Europe, you can buy what Russia lacks and increasingly acutely will not, and besides, you can live at a slightly different level. Successive packages of sanctions imposed on Russia are gradually worsening the public mood. But the peculiarities of the Russian political system, which is close to a police state, offer little scope for protest. Any resistance from public opinion would have to be massive in order to weaken the imperialist tendencies of the authorities in Moscow. The prosecutor's office is continuing to investigate the pollution in the River Odra. The case is being dealt with by a specially appointed team of investigators. Over 220 witnesses have already been heard. Today, parliamentary committees dealt with the ecological catastrophe of the River Odra.
Today, the Sejm hosted a meeting of the parliamentary team for the restoration of the Oder River and a joint committee for maritime economy and inland navigation, as well as environmental protection, natural resources, and forestry. We still do not know the perpetrators of the Oder contamination. If I may, I would like to continue with a statement that I could not continue in order to pass on the information that we started sampling after receiving signals of incidents on the Oder River on July 28th. On Saturday, Marshal of the Lubuskie region, Elżbieta Polak, reported that Axel Vogel, Minister of Agriculture and Environmental Protection of the state of Brandenburg, in a direct conversation with her, confirmed that there was a high concentration of mercury in the Oder River. Today, the Chief Environmental Inspectorate released the results of samples from 5 provinces. It was reported that elevated mercury levels occurred in the Gliwice and Kędzierzyn Canal in Silesia. As added, this is a phenomenon caused by the deposition of heavy metals on the bottom, which is typical of industrial areas. The speaker's statement has lived to see the reaction of the ruling party, which wants her resignation for spreading this information. In the midst of efforts to save the Oder River, when dozens of people are involved to minimize the effects of the environmental disaster, Madame Speaker is stating untruths, spreading such unrest. In addition to the environmental disaster, we're talking about a communications and coordination disaster. So far, 100 tons of dead fish have been fished out of the Oder River and must be disposed of. The Polish Fishing Association calls the situation serious. The current ecological situation on and around the Oder River is the biggest ecological disaster of the 21st century in Poland. On Saturday, August 13th, the commander-in-chief of the Polish police set a 1 million zloty reward for identifying the person responsible for the contamination of the Oder River. Today, Prosecutor General Zbigniew Ziobro announced that the case is being investigated by the prosecutor's office. Immediately after the prosecutor's office received notice of a possible crime in the case, the prosecutor's office initiated proceedings. A large investigative team consisting of as many as 7 experienced prosecutors and 5 police officers has been set up as part of this investigation, carrying out unusual investigative activities. In addition to the human factor, the possibility that natural factors are responsible for fish die-offs is still not ruled out. We need to find the cause if the die-off occurs due to natural causes, low water levels, or other factors related to nature and climate circumstances. Last week, dead fish were also fished out of the Ner River. According to the Łódź Regional Office, the cause was the lack of sufficient oxygen in the water. No chemicals were detected in the river, and the river can be used anew. About 250 kilograms of fish were pulled from the water there.
Flooding in Paris. The downpour of the century saw waves of violent storms and heavy rain pass over the French capital, causing the closure of a number of metro stations for several hours. In just a few hours, Paris had as much rain as normally falls in 2 months over the summer. Some streets and several metro stations were flooded, while the running of trains on several sections of the metro has been suspended. In many places, wind blowing at speeds of over 100 kilometers per hour broke tree branches. The roofs of several buildings were also damaged. The wave of violent storms and downpours also plagued the south of the country, namely in the vicinity of Montpellier, the Rhone Valley and the French Riviera. French weather services reported that the level of the River Seine had risen by 35 centimeters. The Paris Fire Service issued warnings instructing residents to stay indoors. That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.